We've spent a lot of time across this series thinking about the implications of COVID-19 for digital finance. And what we've seen is that over the past year, COVID, amongst many other things, has dramatically accelerated digitization. Digitization of everything, but digitization of finance in particular. And we've seen that digitization really concentrated in four different areas. The first, which we talked about last month, is in the context of payments and digitization of payments, a dramatic expansion in the use of new technologies. Second, and what we're going to talk about a little bit today, the use of technology for regulatory and supervisory purposes. Now, when we think about this, RegTech or SupTech, this is the use of technology for regulatory, compliance, and supervisory purposes. And over the past year and a half, COVID-19 has dramatically accelerated the use of technology for regulatory and supervisory purposes, both by industry participants as well as by regulators and supervisors. Why? Lockdowns around the world have meant that the usual face-to-face interactions between customers and financial institutions, between financial institutions and their compliance staffs, between compliance and risk management, between regulators and other regulators, and between regulators and financial institutions have all had to take place on a non-face-to-face basis. Between lockdowns, work from home, non-face-to-face interactions, there has been a dramatic acceleration of the use of technologies for regulatory and supervisory purposes. And if we think about the big directions, something that my colleagues and I have written about for an extended period of time, that when we are thinking about the use of technology for regulatory and supervisory purposes, it's not just about efficiencies. It's often about fundamentally redesigning systems so that not only are they more efficient, but also they are better at achieving our regulatory and supervisory objectives. And this is the idea, the power of RegTech. And if we think about this in the context of our main regulatory and supervisory objectives, even before COVID-19, if we think back to the end of 2019, financial services industry had already spent $300 billion since the 2008 global financial crisis on fines as a result of penalties and violations. They were spending every year as of the end of 2019 $300 billion on IT and another $300 billion a year on compliance. And so it's no surprise that when we take in COVID-19 and its dramatic acceleration of digitization, both by the industry as well as regulators and supervisors, that we are seeing some dramatic changes. And if we think about those from the standpoint of our major regulatory objectives, we can think about financial stability. Financial stability is about preventing financial crises. And over an extended period of time, particularly since the 2008 crisis, there has been ever more attention to disclosure by the financial services industry to regulators and supervisors in order to try to prevent financial crises before they happen, and when events do happen, to have the information to be able to deal with it. Core to this is something called Bcbs 239. It's publication 239 of the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, the International Banking Regulatory Standards Setter. And this is a requirement that global financial institutions have in place technology and processes to aggregate data about their risk positions globally on a daily basis and to be able to provide that information to regulators. Something that we're seeing today as a result of acceleration of digitization is even more attention on this issue, both from industry as well as from regulators. Second is in the context of market integrity, preventing the criminal and terrorist use of the financial system. And this is something where we've talked about in previous episodes, the idea of how we can use technology to build better systems around digital ID and data analytics. And this is something that is getting a dramatic acceleration as a result of COVID's impact. Third is around investor and customer protection. And investor and customer protection typically centers around disclosure requirements. And we are seeing a dramatic acceleration in jurisdictions of digital regulatory reporting. Essentially, the idea, regulators requiring the industry to report in a digital fashion. This allows the regulators to simplify data collection, but it also allows the application of analytics so that they are better able to police potential market violations and monitor the overall safety and soundness of the financial services system. More broadly, we can think about monetary policy. If we look at monetary policy, key to monetary policy is information on payments. And with the explosion of digital payments, there has also been a necessity for developing better mechanisms of collecting data on all of those digital payments in order to allow regulators, supervisors, central banks to better achieve their objectives of monetary policy and monetary stability. So, when we think about all of these trends together, the first level that we're seeing across the spectrum is around digital reporting, as regulators increasingly require industry participants to report regulatory information in a digital fashion. The second is around analytics, the use of analytics by regulators and supervisors, but also the industry to better analyze the sorts of data that they are collecting in a digital format and to be able to identify where there are gaps in data and then to be able to request the data they need. The final piece is really around thinking about overall systems design. How can we think about issues of infrastructure to support non-face-to-face interactions between regulators and supervisors in order to build better financial systems and support sustainable development more broadly?